Welcome to my madness. And I call it madness because, well, let's face it, a lot of what's happening, particularly in with the government and everything, is enough to make anybody mad. And my madness is commenting on it, or at least looking for solutions and sharing them. And in this particular presentation, I've advocated on Facebook and my posts and such about needing a third party to break this polarized environment that we are living in. Because right now it's Democrats over here, Republicans over there, and the only time they come to the middle is when they're getting in the ring to fight. We've had this for over 20 years. This party line voting, this party line polarization. It's got our country polarized. It's either this or that. And I'm 60 years old, and I can remember a time when Republicans and Democrats would come together, not the entire party, but enough of them would come together, and together they built policies that helped everyone. They found a way to support their party's goals while balancing it with the needs of the people. And we don't have that anymore. And I believe we were strongest when we were able to do that. So I want to present the idea of a centrist third party, or a more moderate third party. And I want to give you an idea of what it might look like. Having a party that didn't lean too far to the left in their liberal thinking, and too far to the right in their traditional thinking or conservative thinking, but something that's more along someplace in the middle. And nature is all about harmony. And when you look at nature, there are no polarized regions, unless, of course, you're looking at the North Pole and the South Pole, and they're not really polarized, they're just apart. They're both pretty damn cold. They're both pretty white with all that snow. So when you look at nature, there is harmony in nature, because nature moves into the disaster zone and back into the moderate zone. It moves back and forth. And that is what life should be. That is what our government should be. And it's not. And by examining potential benefits and problems with this type of political ideology, or this type of philosophy, we can explore the impact on party line voting, which is something that is on the increase. It's gone from 60% 20 years ago to 90% and more today. But envisioning a more moderate party, you can imagine what the political landscape in the United States might look like. And I have to say, that, even with a moderate party bringing the two together, moderate and centrists are often used interchangeable, but they are different in and of themselves. The differences are subtle, but they are still different because moderates, while they do not support extreme positions, they do tend to lean in one direction or the other. And it's really these people here that can do us the most good, because a centrist party is firmly planted in the middle of the road, and that can be just as dangerous. So let's consider the potential philosophical and political ideology this type of a central party might possess. Because those who are centrists, and I'll give you a quick example of a centrist person, they are the ones who advocate for balance. They tell you that life must be a balance. They tell you that everything must be balanced. And a balance does not work. A balance merely breeds more stagnation. What we need is a philosophy or an ideology that's more concerned with harmonizing the conflicting ideologies of liberalism and conservatism, or of democratic positions and republican positions. We need something that would create a middle ground that prioritizes real solutions over ideology. Philosophically, we need policies, or we need people to broker policies that blend the two. And these have demonstrated success. We need policies that are not just driven by political dogma. We need policies that can succeed for everyone. We need policies that emphasize the importance of dialogue between opposing parties. Because historically, the best solutions are not from liberal ideology or conservative ideology. The best solutions have always been those that have both. President Carter successfully demonstrated the idea of centrist values in human rights and diplomacy. And he demonstrated this through the Camp David Accords, which brought a peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. He also focused on deregulating some of the sectors, such as airlines and the trucking. And the idea behind this was to promote economic efficiency. These are his successes. Unfortunately, it was his handling of the Iran hostage crisis that undermined a lot of his credibility. It's what became known in the economy as stagflation, which is a new term that is being tossed around because of our tariffs today. But it undermined his bipartisan support. And another example is President Clinton, who embraced third way politics, which is a blending of liberal and conservative policies. It's moderate. Moderatism is what it is. And during his presidency, he managed to restructure the budget, reform social programs, and this was all while dealing with his scandal with, I think her name was Monica Lewinsky. He managed to do this. In fact, when he left office, he was one of the few presidents, if not the only president, to leave office with the country having a surplus in funds. He raised taxes and he reduced spending. Unfortunately, his 1994 crime bill didn't have as much success. But what we would be looking for is a third political party that would incorporate a blending of these ideas, drawing from the best part of liberalism, because liberalism has some pretty good ideas. It's because of liberalism we have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP. It is because of that we have that. It is because of conservatism that we have a strong military, that we have, well, it's not necessarily acted upon, but the idea of fiscal responsibility. In fact, if I recall correctly, Congressman McCain promoted fiscal responsibility, and he was criticized for it. So both of these aspects, both of these ideologies, they have some very significant ideas. The liberal aspect focuses on diplomacy. The conservative aspect focuses on a strong military. What's wrong with having both? This is the idea here. And the party might draw from, well, libertarianism. Libertarianism is what promoted a limited government and limited government intervention in the Conservative Party. That's a liberal idea there. Personal freedoms, and can draw from communitarianism, which focuses on the community and a collective well-being. And in case you're not familiar with that term, communitarianism is a social and political philosophy that stresses the importance of community, meaning all of you together, not just all of you as individuals, but a community, and how this community shapes your identity. Remember the Black Lives Matter movement. That is community shaping identity and community values. Communitarianism recommends a blending of individual rights with communal responsibilities. Think of social programs with community responsibilities, such as, cleaning parks, such as volunteering at daycare centers or senior centers. This is the idea, communal responsibilities. It also fosters the belief of social cohesion and collective action for the common good. Yeah, okay, this smacks of communism or socialism, but let's face it, Chicago is a community. New York is a community. Manhattan, New York is a community. Brooklyn, New York is a community. We have communities within communities. Small towns in rural United States, those are communities. We are social creatures, and we depend on social interactions. We depend on communities. New Harmony, Indiana was something that was developed by Robert Owen back in I think, the late 1800s. Of course, his intention was to create a utopian community based on communal living. We still see that today in various areas. The Amish can be considered a utopian community. Unfortunately, it only lasted 2 years. However, what he did inspired social reform movements. The kibbutzim inspired communities. These were based on Israeli ideas, the concept of a collective community, which inspired similar initiatives in the United States in the form of agricultural and cooperative housing projects, agricultural co-ops. I mean, these are great ideas. So a centrist philosophy or moderate philosophy would not mean a lack of ideology, but a blending of diverse perspectives. Diverse perspectives. Diversity has become a dirty word because there is such a fervor to stamp out diversity, equality, and inclusion initiatives. Granted, some of those policies were unbelievable. And the government failed us because they didn't review these policies. Because everything changes, everything in nature changes. And if we are to continue, we have to change. These policies have to evolve. These programs have to evolve. You can't have the same program in 2025 that was put into place in 2000. It's ridiculous. So how might this type of a party help us in the legislature? Well, it could serve as a moderating force, bringing together the extreme left, the extreme right ideas, politicians, bringing them together to put everything on the table. All ideas should be discussed. And through these discussions, partisan gridlock, which often brings a halt to the process, which gives us crappy policies, crappy legislation. If everything was brought together by all parties involved, we could have something that would serve a majority of the people. No, it won't serve everybody. To think that is ridiculous, but it could serve a majority of the people. Many of our policies are focused on small marginal groups when we could develop policies that would include most of these groups. Having a moderate party can reduce party line voting, can reduce polarized views, can encourage collaboration, can encourage dialogue. This is what we need. Issues on healthcare and immigration, what we're seeing happening right now with immigration is an extreme action. And why is it extreme? Because the other party went to the other extreme, or so that's how it's played out in the news. Whereas if there was a third moderate party that would break this gridlock, that would break this party line voting, it would force some of these, maybe not all of these people, but it would force some of these people to move closer to the middle, and then we could have something that's much, much better than what we had before and what is being done now. Because what is happening now is we have bullying tactics within the legislature. The Republicans bully their people to follow party line ideas, and the Democrats do the same thing with their people, bully them to be on board with what they want. Too much bullying. No wonder the United States is in such disarray. We've got all these bullies out there. Now, of course, with everything that can be beneficial, there's always something that's going to be harmful. And with a moderate party, there's the potential for fragmentation of the votes, not having enough votes to move legislation through. There's always that potential there. Of course, my thoughts on that would be this, that, okay, if there's not enough votes there, then it's not as good as it could be. Because policies require majority votes. Having a third party would force a coalition. And while a coalition ensures the inclusion of diverse views and negotiations and ensures that the power doesn't rest at any one party, it can also create enough fragmentation to where disagreements overpower what could be potentially good legislation. It can ruin the decision process. It may even skew accountability. So yeah, it's a great idea, but it, like everything else, everything has its downside. We have to accept that. But when the downside becomes the ruling side, the solution becomes obvious. And one of the nice things about a moderate party is that it can help prioritize policies that are being brought to the floor to be voted on. It can prioritize the issues involved in the policies and not have party loyalty be the focus, because then party loyalty would not have enough votes all by itself to ram it through. It would break that up. So the voting patterns in both houses would be more diverse. It would force the party leaders to more negotiation instead of isolation. We have enough isolation in this country right now. What we need now is something to bring us together, not necessarily unite us in a single focus, because we don't want that either, because then you have group thought. But it allows us to come together and still have individual ideas and individual thoughts. And it could make voting in the legislation unpredictable. Of course, it could be good, it could be bad. But if we had a more moderate position here that was flexible, see, centrists are focused on maintaining that balance, but moderates are more about flexibility than anything else. And we could have a healthy debate on these policies without someone saying, just close your eyes and vote. This would be helpful to all the people, including those voters who choose not to vote. Maybe I shouldn't even call them voters, but it could benefit it could benefit more. There are a lot of voters who are becoming disillusioned by the polarization of our two-party system, myself included. Why should I bother voting when my vote is not going to count? I'm not voting for an individual. I'm voting for a party now. Anybody who's out there who does the research on who to vote for what, forget about who to vote for what. Look at the party, because what's happening today will continue until we get some changes in here, until the people start asking, demanding for representatives who are more moderate. Mr. Sanders is, and there's another person here, Mr. Frost, I believe, as well, are saying that the Democrats have to re-engage the blue collar worker and this and that. And you know what? To hell with that. They're not interested. What is the mantra now? Stop Trump, stop Trump. That's all they're worried about. They don't have a plan. That was obvious during the election when they threw Vice President Harris in there. No preparations or anything, no plan. Look what happened. Everything that's taking place now is because they did not have a plan, because they began to focus on their party ideas and not on the people, not on the citizens of the United States. And that's what we need. A moderate party could engage those people who are disillusioned through the polarization that is taking place in the country today, in the legislation today. And it might even encourage those people who choose not to vote to vote. because a moderate party would focus more on compromise and collaboration, more on bringing people together and discussing everything, putting it all out on the table and getting rid of the crap and keeping the good stuff. A moderate party could create a recipe for success. We may even have much better governance, much more effective government. And let's face it, the credibility of the United States is starting to dwindle on a globe, across the globe. And like I said, there's always the downside on stuff. Again, having that third party would fragment the vote and could potentially lead to a legislative stalemate. A moderate party may not be able to clarify its goals well enough and create confusion, which would, again, hurt it, bringing us right back to this side versus that side. Compromise sometimes can prevent decisive action. But what we've got now with decisive action is not necessarily a benefit. A lot of these immigrants that are coming in legally, they too are being pushed out. A lot of our corporations, and this is corporate America, a lot of our corporations import their intellectual resources. And if we're closing that door, our innovation that we like to say is what America is all about will dwindle. Just some ideas to keep in mind. While the advent of a third party may encourage a more harmonized approach to legislation and along with that, a potentially better government, it has its pitfalls. And the success of this type of party would depend on its ability to not only navigate the complexities of political compromise and legislative effectiveness, but identity. But if it is done well and done properly, it would redefine our political landscape, bringing us a refreshing alternative to what we are experiencing now. I want to thank you very much for allowing me to share this with you, and thank you for stopping by. I hope this was food for thought. I'm sure somebody else has presented something on this idea as well, as this idea of a third party. And I want to wish you a wonderful day. Thank you again. Also, if you found this useful, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We explore a variety of philosophies, ideologies, including spirituality and such. So thank you again.